Living in Trump's world. This opinion examines Trump's foreign policy, Ukraine's crisis, and shifting global alliances. The world sat spellbound watching as a shouting match erupted in the Oval Office on live TV, with the U.S. president and his guest, the Ukrainian president, speaking over each other in a rising decibel exchange, triggered by the remarks of the finger-waving U.S. vice president. Sat spellbound means watched in fascination. Shouting match means a loud argument. Rising decibel exchange means voices grew louder. Triggered by means caused by. Finger-waving suggests scolding. This sentence describes a heated public confrontation between Trump and Zelensky, sparked by the vice president's gestures. If the world needed any evidence that 105 years on, Trump policies today were little different to the agenda that propelled Warren Harding, trade, tariffs, and not much else, multilateralism included, into the White House in 1920 and marked the start of the U.S. isolationism. It came in abundance in the two presidents meeting with J.D. Vance acting as the catalyst. 105 years on means a century later. Little different means almost the same. Propelled means helped win. Marked the start means began. Isolationism means avoiding global affairs. Came in abundance means was clear. Catalyst means trigger. This sentence compares Trump's policies with past U.S. isolationism, highlighting Vance's key role. For it was Vance who provoked the Ukrainian leader to fall into the trap set for him. Yes, it may have seemed a spontaneous spiral, but to me it was scripted. Provoked means intentionally angered. Fall into the trap means got tricked. Spontaneous spiral means sudden escalation. Scripted means planned. This sentence suggests Vance deliberately set up Zelensky's reaction, making the escalation appear pre-planned. Scripted to play to the MAGA's gallery, which, as the U.S. right-wing media reaction demonstrated, lapped it up, loved it, because it's been told it has been paying for a meaningless war. Play to the MAGA gallery means appeal to Trump supporters. Lapped it up means accepted eagerly. Meaningless war means unnecessary conflict. This sentence argues the event was staged to reinforce Trump supporters' view that U.S. aid to Ukraine is wasteful. While Europe, the newly born leader of the free world, sprang vocally to Volodymyr Zelensky's defense, with leaders ranging from Keir Starmer to Emmanuel Macron to Pedro Sanchez to Donald Tusk to many others making clear their position in public declarations. Hungary's Viktor Orbán, who has called Trump his comrade in arms, was the solitary voice of dissent. Newly born leader of the free world implies Europe is stepping into global leadership. Sprang vocally means quickly spoke out. Comrade in arms means close ally. Solitary voice of dissent means the only opponent. This sentence notes that while most European leaders defended Zelensky, Orbán stood alone by siding with Trump. He wants to run U.S. government and policy as a transactional private sector CEO. Transactional means deal-based. Private sector CEO suggests a business-like approach. This sentence argues that Trump manages U.S. policy like a corporate executive, focused on immediate deals. While those who voted for Trump saw their leader walking the talk, Europe, which was always punching above its weight in terms of seeking an expansion of NATO further to the east of Poland into Ukraine, was now closing ranks, having been ditched by the U.S. Walking the talk means fulfilling promises. Punching above its weight means striving beyond its capacity. Closing ranks means uniting. Ditched means abandoned. This sentence contrasted Trump's perceived reliability for his voters with Europe's feeling of betrayal as the U.S. pulls back. Europe's desire to see Ukraine in NATO was not matched by its defense spending and would always have to be reliant on the U.S. to foot a big part of the bill. Not matched means unsupported. Foot a big part of the bill means pay most of the cost. This sentence explains that Europe's NATO ambitions depended on U.S. funding due to its limited military budget. So far, U.S. leaders have happily picked it up through their extraordinary defense budget, but Trump says no more. Picked it up means covered the cost. Extraordinary defense budget means massive military spending. Trump says no more means he refuses to continue. This sentence contrasts past U.S. support with Trump's new stance. He wants to run U.S. government and policy as a transactional private sector CEO and has repeatedly asked why the U.S. should foot the bill for inter alia Europe's security when there is a huge deficit at home. Foot the bill means pay. Inter alia means among other things. Huge deficit at home means significant domestic financial problems. This sentence restates Trump's argument that U.S. funds should prioritize domestic issues over foreign commitments. Trust Trump, of course, to exaggerate, even lie and cite spurious figures such as the over $350 billion for the Ukraine war effort so far, with the actual amount nearer $185 billion. Exaggerate means overstate. Spurious figures means false numbers. Nearer $185 billion means much less than claimed. This sentence accuses Trump of inflating costs to suit his narrative. French leader Macron reached out earlier this week gently to touch Trump's arm and point out with a smile that Europe has paid some 60% of the war's cost when the U.S. president was again trying to make his MAGA voter believe he was the only one paying for it. Reached out means made a gesture. Gently to touch implies a conciliatory action. 60% means a large share. This sentence describes Macron's attempt to correct Trump's misleading claim about war expenses. Even then, few world leaders have what it takes to say to the U.S. the price it's paying is for its imperialist, hegemonic policies, because it wants to dominate the world militarily so as to shape it in line with its capitalist ideals. Few world leaders have what it takes means very few dare to speak up. Imperialist, hegemonic policies means strategies for global dominance. Shape it in line with its capitalist ideals means impose its economic model. This sentence argues that few leaders challenge the U.S. about its costly quest for power. Macron was sitting in the same Oval Office chair in which Zelensky found himself at the weekend. Same Oval Office chair symbolizes shared experience. This sentence implies Macron too faced U.S. pressure, linking his experience with Zelensky's. The Trump-Vance-Zelensky blow-up came after several days of Trump denigrating the Ukrainian leader, calling him a dictator whose popularity rating was down to 4 PC, another lie, and who now needed to pay the U.S. back via a $500 billion rare earth minerals deal. Blow-up means heated argument. Denigrating means insulting. 4 PC suggests a fabricated low approval rating. Rare earth minerals deal refers to a high-value trade agreement. This sentence states that after days of insults and false claims, Trump pressured Zelensky into a costly deal. Despite this several days-long baiting, Zelensky arrived in the U.S. to sign the deal. In return, he wanted ironclad security guarantees. Baiting means provoking repeatedly. Ironclad security guarantees mean strong, unbreakable promises of protection. This sentence explains that despite the provocation, Zelensky still came seeking secure commitments. Trump was only willing to say, well, our presence in the mineral exploration projects would ensure peace, and that Vladimir Putin understood this. Only willing to say means offered a vague reply. Our presence would ensure peace implies a weak promise. Putin understood this, hints at an unspoken message to Russia. This sentence shows Trump's avoidance of concrete security commitments. This did not seem enough for Ukraine and may have been the reason the trap was sprung, mainly to tell the U.S. public how adamant Zelensky was not to make any concessions and how disrespectful he'd been to the U.S. leaders, White House, and Congress. Did not seem enough means was unsatisfactory. Trap was sprung means the setup was activated. Adamant means unyielding. Concessions means compromises. Disrespectful means rude. This sentence argues the confrontation was orchestrated to portray Zelensky as stubborn and ungrateful. This was the spiral which the world watched live. Spiral means escalating chaos. Watched live means seen in real time. This sentence sums up the public spectacle of the events. A provoked Zelensky lashed out, and then the fallout, according to U.S. media reports, led to him being asked to leave the White House with the deal signing, joint presser, and lunch canceled. Lashed out means reacted angrily. Fallout means consequences. Asked to leave means dismissed. Joint presser means combined press conference. This sentence details how Zelensky's angry reaction resulted in his abrupt exit from planned events. Soon afterwards, U.S. Congress veteran Republican Lindsey Graham, a staunch Trump ally, also harped on the disrespect to the U.S. tune, even calling for Zelensky's resignation. Soon afterwards means shortly after. Veteran Republican means experienced politician. Harped on means repeatedly stressed. This sentence shows that Trump's allies used the incident to demand harsh measures against Zelensky. Against this backdrop, whether a deal could still be salvaged is not clear. More significantly, neither is whether this meeting will once more lead to U.S. isolationism. Against this backdrop means considering these events. Salvaged means saved. U.S. isolationism means withdrawal from global affairs. This sentence questions if the fallout will force the U.S. to retreat from international engagement. The last time the U.S. came out of its post, World War I isolationism was with the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II. Post-World War I isolationism means the period when the U.S. avoided global conflicts. Pearl Harbor refers to the attack that ended isolationism. This sentence draws a historical parallel to highlight potential shifts in U.S. policy. Will it take another Pearl Harbor for MAGA supporters to realize that the world today is even more interlinked via the U.S.-pushed globalization than it was back then? Another Pearl Harbor is a metaphor for a major crisis. MAGA supporters refers to Trump's base. Interlinked means connected. U.S.-pushed globalization means America's role in global trade. This sentence questions if only a disaster will force Trump's supporters to recognize global interdependence. Or will something else dictate the course of history? In the immediate short term, for example, will Zelensky buckle and agree to a deal on Trump-Putin terms, which basically accept the status quo in Donbass and also the Russian annexation of Crimea? Vento. Dictate the course of history means determine future events. Buckle means give in under pressure. Status quo means current conditions. Russian annexation of Crimea refers to Russia's control over Crimea. This sentence asks whether Zelensky will be forced into a deal favoring Russia's territorial gains. For someone like this columnist, whose faith has been shaken, more or less shattered, by the Democratic West's endorsement of the denial of Palestinians' rights, and more recently the Gaza genocide, it may be easier not to be too concerned by these developments. Faith has been shaken means trust is lost. More or less shattered means nearly destroyed. Denial of Palestinian rights means ignoring their freedoms. Gaza genocide refers to severe violence against Palestinians. This sentence expresses the writer's disillusionment with Western policies. It would be easy to pass this off as a fight between supporters of those responsible for the denial of Palestinian rights, occupation of their land, and worst of all, their dehumanization. But would that be too simplistic, even dogmatic? Pass this off means dismiss it as denial of rights means suppression of freedoms. Dehumanization means treating people as less than human. This sentence questions whether the issue is merely a binary conflict or more complex than that. The only redeeming sign in all of this is that Trump has once again signaled his aversion to war. Redeeming sign means a small positive aspect. Signaled his aversion to war means showed dislike for conflict. This sentence notes that despite everything, Trump appears reluctant to engage in military conflict. He has always been warm and understanding towards Putin, so much so that he is now suggesting he'd be prepared to ditch Zelensky. Warm and understanding means friendly. Ditch Zelensky means abandon him. This sentence argues that Trump's favorable stance toward Putin might lead him to withdraw support from Ukraine. Will his aversion to conflict also translate into restraining Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel? I know you'd say if wishes were horses. Aversion to conflict means dislike of war. Restrain means hold back. If wishes were horses is a way to say that hoping for it is unrealistic. This sentence questions whether Trump's peace preference will extend to limiting Israel's actions, though the writer is skeptical. The writer is a former editor of Dawn, Abbas Nasir at hotmail.com, published in Dawn, March 2nd, 2025.